Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. At the July 16th coronavirus press conference, Monroe County Health Administrator Penny Caudill talked about the COVID-19 Delta variant. Caudill said that the majority of positive COVID-19 cases are still the Alpha strain. She cautioned that the Delta variant is growing and that residents should be aware of the ways they can help lower their own risks.
About 75% of our tests out of the variants that have come from Monroe County, over 75% have been the Alpha or the B117, but almost 20% are Delta. So the Delta variant is here. We know that it's easier to transmit. So please be cautious. If you're vaccinated or if you're not vaccinated, regardless of the reasons, wear your mask, practice distancing, all those things that we've been talking about. And all of us need to continue to be aware of all the prevention tools that are needed.
IU Health President Brian Shockney said that 99% of patients admitted to the hospital with COVID-19 symptoms are unvaccinated. He commented on the lower vaccine rates of neighboring counties and identified it as an opportunity for Monroe County to help lower everyone's risk of catching COVID-19.
It's important to remember we are still impacted greatly by those surrounding counties. We still have opportunities for increasing vaccination rates. So if you work or socialize or have a house of worship or anything with someone from another county who is not vaccinated, encourage them. Encourage them and challenge them to get their county where our county in Monroe is.
Future coronavirus press conferences will continue bi-weekly. The next press conference will be on July 30th. At the July 19th meeting of the Richland Bean Blossom School Board, Superintendent Dr. Jerry Sanders proposed a contingency learning and safety plan for the 2021 to 2022 school year that focuses on keeping one consistent schedule for the entire year. He said that the school board may have to change other safety measures in response.
My goal for our safety plan for 2021-2022 is to hopefully stay in one schedule, not to go back and forth and implement different schedules. That was really hard on students and staff all year long. But instead to adjust our safety measures.
Board member Angie Jacobs agreed with public comment that children need more mental health options. She added that it does not change the severity of the coronavirus, especially the Delta variant.
The families that talked about mental health, I completely agree with that. I understand that 100% as I dealt with that in my own family. So I'm with everyone 100% with that. We also have to understand that COVID is very real. I'm a nurse. I work in it. I have worked in it for a year and a half. It is extremely real. The variant is there, and it is stronger than ever before. So we have to be cautious, careful, and look at all sides of the matter.
Resident Michelle Garrett suggested the board strike a clause that requires volunteers and chaperones be fully vaccinated. Dr. Sanders said he would think about it, but the requirement is a way to make field trips safe and possible.
Bottom line is, how can we do field trips and stay safe? And I thought that was, if we could have field trips and ask our volunteers that are going to be vaccinated, I thought that was a safe step to take and to continue to have field trips.
Board members voted to approve the plan 4-1, with board member Jimmy Durnall dissenting. On July 19th, the Bloomington Redevelopment Commission talked about COVID-19 grant funds. Director of Housing and Neighborhood Development, John Zodi, presented a resolution for the 9 local organizations that had been approved to receive community development block grant funding. He said that COVID-19 restrictions on the funding made it even harder to award.
Apart from a regular community development block grant dollars that the city gets, which I won't say has more relaxed guidelines, it's have different guidelines. There's a whole other set of restrictions and regulations on COVID-specific community development block grant dollars. So on behalf of the organizations that were not funded, I will say that this money was a lot harder.
Commissioner Nick Koppas asked about the short window for public comment. He suggested that 5 days is too short, even if they don't receive many comments.
I just feel like 5 days is just not enough for public. Now, I'm not saying usually we get a lot of comments, but restricting it to 1/6 of what it once was, that's quite a long period of, or a short period.
Zodi replied that the guidelines have been made available to the public for a long time. He said he was confident the guidelines had been advertised adequately.
I feel pretty comfortable with how we advertised this. We announced it at a press conference, and the application materials were sent out to more than 600 organizations around the city and Bloomington Volunteer Network and all that. So I feel like we had we had 2 technical assistance meetings for applications. So I feel pretty comfortable with the level of transparency that we had on the program.
Commissioners approved the resolution unanimously. Director Vic Kelson talked to the Bloomington Utilities Service Board about applying for grant funding. At the July 19th meeting, Kelson discussed the possibility of Bloomington receiving funds to improve stormwater infrastructure. He clarified that the funds were for planning and not for flood relief.
This isn't relief money. This would be more of an assessment tool for seeing what our improved infrastructure can handle, and then what, if any, improvements might need to be made going forward in the event of another really intense storm like that.
Board member Kirk White commented on the importance of addressing the infrastructure. He said that 2 serious floods in 1 month proved that something is wrong with the inlet.
6th and Indiana flooded significantly again, and 6th Street did. We had vehicles with water about a quarter of the way up, and a couple of cars flooded out and things like that. So this is an urgent problem. I mean, here we have really twice in a month significant damage, and whatever is happening there at the inlet to the aqueduct is just not able to handle all this.
The next Utilities Service Board meeting is scheduled for August 2nd. And we'll have more CATSweek after this message.
Do you know that thousands of children go without school supplies every day? Teachers Warehouse is a 100% volunteer-powered organization. We service the educational and creative needs of students in Monroe, Brown, Greene, Lawrence, and Owen counties by distributing school supplies free to the teachers. Teachers Warehouse is composed of 7 rooms filled with books, pencils, paper, and even tools to motivate students. If it's in a classroom, we'll supply it. To donate new or gently used school supplies or volunteer, give us a call at 812-929-7522 or email us at contact@teacherswarehouse.net.
Welcome back to CATSweek. The Monroe County Plan Commission discussed a rezone in Perry Township. At the July 20th meeting, developer Kevin Schmidt talked about the request to rezone the trails at Robertson Farm location from Residential Zone 1 to Medium Density Residential Zone. He said the developers could no longer offer low-cost housing options due to the denial of a previous rezone request.
We lost some of the ability to do some of the lower offerings when we lost the ability to have smaller lot sizes in specific areas, but we still maintain the 300 to 400 range. And that is, versus an RE1 zone that would be, over $700,000, which again, I believe everyone saw last time and is in our backup slides. That is a very saturated market currently. So not something that the county is looking for.
Resident Guy Laughlin commented on the petitioner's public notice. He suggested that the public notice was full of errors in the petitioner's favor.
Petitioner was instructed to send new notices, but the notices were wrong. They haven't updated the signs. They continue to not tell the public accurate information.
County Attorney Dave Schilling clarified that a public notice with mistakes is still appropriate notice if the public still knows when to give public comment. Commissioners agreed unanimously that the notice was sufficient. Commissioner Jerry Pittsford moved to send the rezone to the county commissioners without a recommendation. His motion failed without a second. Commissioner Jeff McKim moved to send the rezone with a positive recommendation. His motion failed 3-4, with Commissioners Jeff McKim, Tron Enright Randolph, and Amy Thompson voting in support. The rezone request will receive a final hearing at the August 17th meeting. The Monroe County Board of Health talked about administering the COVID-19 vaccine at its July 20th meeting. Board member Dr. Carol Talukian said the number one reason people don't get vaccinated is due to missed opportunities. She questioned Monroe County Health Administrator Penny Caudill on whether county health officials could distribute vaccines during outreach. Caudill responded that the vaccine's short shelf life makes it difficult to bring door to door. She suggested that a nurse could instead return to the house of a resident who is interested in the vaccine at a later date.
Part of the problem with that is the vaccine and how long, if once you open it up, how long it lasts and all of that. So if you don't know, you don't have any idea how many people you're going to see or what you're going to do, that can be problematic. This person won't necessarily be a nurse, so she won't be able to give the vaccinations, but we can go back to them. So it wouldn't necessarily be that they have to show up somewhere. It can be that we can go back.
Board member Ashley Craner asked if Monroe County would be getting a mobile vaccine clinic. Caudill said the Indiana Department of Health was deploying them and had already visited Monroe County.
So they were in Harrodsburg. They were in Harrodsburg at the community center in June, and they were back, I think it was last week, to do the second dose. So when they went out, they had Johnson & Johnson and they had Pfizer. So they could do 12 and up, and then they scheduled later to come back and do those second doses. They were also at our county fair for 2 days. So those are the kinds of things that they can do.
The next Board of Health meeting is August 9th. The Bloomington Board of Public Safety discussed flood damage at its July 20th meeting. Bloomington Police Department Captain Scott Oldham talked about the damage to BPD headquarters caused by the June 18th floods. He said that officers were able to continue working out of the BPD headquarters despite significant water damage in its basement.
Thankfully, the way we have structured the department over the last 6-8 years gives us a lot of modularity and a lot of ability to move people around within both the building and our other facilities. Right now, anything that was downstairs, so for us, that was the detective division, that was evidence, that was the athletic trainer, storage rooms, they are all upstairs now. So it's kind of like everyone came home for Christmas and stayed. So everybody's sitting on top of each other. We've got a lot of tables where there aren't normal tables, phones where they're not normally phones, and computers where, frankly, they're just sitting out in the middle right now being used because we've had to kind of all come upstairs.
Bloomington Fire Department Chief Jason Moore talked about relocating their headquarters. He said the fire department has been working hard to get back to regular function. Moore added that the department had been parking its trucks in a nearby parking lot where they are vulnerable to vandalism.
We have an issue, we can't secure the trucks overnight. And just an example of why, just 2 days ago, somebody graffitied one of our fire engines that was parked outside. So we need to make sure we can secure it so that we don't have any issues of missing equipment or problems like we've already experienced.
Moore presented a lease agreement to have a temporary fire truck bay built at the new location. Board members voted to approve the agreement unanimously. The Bloomington Board of Public Works briefly discussed Bloomington Pride Fest at its July 20th meeting. Director of Public Works Adam Wason talked about the board's decision to remove Pride Fest 2021 from the consent agenda. He cited feedback from downtown restaurants about tearing down their temporary outdoor seating so that Pride Fest could use all of Kirkwood as it usually does.
In the end, it comes down to we didn't realize I didn't realize that the expectation was that all of the outdoor restaurant seating would need to be removed for Pride Fest in order to accommodate all of their locations. And we heard back from several of the restaurants in advance of today's meeting, as well as the Kirkwood Community Association saying, hey, can we talk about this? And it was a frustration to Pride for sure. And I understand that it's late in the game. They're trying to get a festival started, organized by the end of August. But we really need to come to some compromise and some agreement here with everyone, and want Pride to have a wonderfully successful program that day, but also need to make sure that we're all working together. I'll even admit that I had an inbox message or a message in my drafts outbox that was supposed to be going to economic and sustainable development staff back in early June that said, how are we accommodating the restaurants? And quite honestly, it sat there in my draft box and didn't get sent. And so it's coming up late, but we're going to get this figured out, and we'll all work together to make sure that happens.
Bloomington Pride Fest will be on the August 3rd agenda. At its first meeting back from recess, the Bloomington City Council discussed American Rescue Plan Act fund appropriation. At the July 21st meeting, members of city staff gave brief presentations about plans for the first round of ARPA funding. Councilmember Isabel Piedmont Smith asked why the ARPA General Plan and the First Appropriation Ordinance both list each appropriation. Corporation Counsel Philippa Guthrie said there were few guidelines for how to document and award ARPA funding. She said Bloomington worked with outside counsel and agreed that this was the best way to keep track of the funding.
Our main concern was that eventually we are documenting all of the expenditures that you are approving and that we are moving forward with, because we will be responsible to account for how we spend the money to the SBOA. So that was our proposed way of doing it. And there is no real guideline for how to do it.
Councilmember Matt Flaherty asked about proposed funding for residents with Section 8 housing vouchers. He questioned Housing and Neighborhood Development Director John Zodi about the decision not to have a more general appropriation for more homeless resources. Zodi responded that the city prioritized voucher holders because they must be housed within a specific time frame.
What we're talking about now is starting with those who hold vouchers, because we know that if they aren't housed in a certain period of time, or that there's the identifying that risk and understanding that for folks that we know have the ability to obtain housing through a voucher, we need to start there and then see where it goes, depending on the amount of money that it takes, depending on the staff capacity that it takes as well.
Councilmember Ron Smith asked why funds were being appropriated for repairs to the Waldron Arts Center if the city was considering building a new arts center. Director of Economic and Sustainable Development, Alex Crowley, said that the Waldron Arts Center is an important step in helping the arts recover from the pandemic right now.
We look at the investment that we're making in the Waldron as, first of all, something that needs to be done to the building because it's been deferred for a while. But also as a critical investment to get the Waldron back open and operating and supporting the arts community as it's clawing its way out of the pandemic for, at least 5 years.
Council members voted unanimously to adopt the resolution. And we'll have more CATSweek after this message.
For hurting families in Monroe County.
A contribution to children who are vulnerable and in need of an advocate.
A staff that goes above and beyond to support and advocate for children in need of services.
The web of remarkable people who are dealing with difficult situations.
So many young people that are in need of help and trying to find a stable family, a stable place to live. Without the CASAs to make that happen, many of them would be unable to find a good home.
I love being that voice for the child who can't speak for themselves in court.
It takes me out of my comfort zone, and it also helps others.
CASA means supporting our community.
Being a CASA is making sure that your village is healthy and whole, and that the children in your village will someday be able to help the village as well.
A child who doesn't have a voice, maybe in their family situation or a school situation, now has a voice that can advocate for them.
I really enjoy working with children that are going through difficult times and letting them know that I care about their future.
We are privileged
with our charge of representing the best interest of children. And so therefore we can advocate for exactly what they need without restriction, focusing on their best interest.
I want to repair the world one child at a time.
Welcome back to CATSweek. The Monroe County Public Library Board of Trustees discussed progress on the Southwest Branch. Architect Christine Mathau presented the latest details on the proposed Southwest Branch of the Monroe County Public Library. She talked about connecting the interior of the library to the exterior by making design choices that felt more organic.
The whole space is intended to connect with nature. So the finishes that we've been choosing are somewhat organic. They feel very much connected with the outdoor setting that this library is in.
Mathau added that the design included silhouettes of native trees. She said putting these in key areas would add to the feeling of being outdoors.
Well, using the native species, we've been looking at silhouettes of trees and how those can become part of the language, the graphic language of the building. So we have been using this one. You can see it in the image on the right, on the bottom, but we will be using a translucent vinyl image that will be laid against the glass in key areas. It'll be at the teen center, collaborative area, children's area, 2 small study rooms, and teaching kitchen. Children's, did I get children's? Yeah. And that will direct you. It'll have these little images that run through the building so you feel like you're still in the trees a little bit.
Board members moved to approve the design and begin advertising it so construction companies can bid on the right to build it. The motion passed unanimously. The Monroe County Commissioners discussed transferring land to the town of Steinsville. County Attorney Dave Schilling said Monroe County obtained 1/4 of an acre of land in Steinsville in 2012. He said Indiana law allows the commissioners to transfer ownership of the land to Steinsville who would like to build a garden on it.
Recently received a letter from the town of Steinsville requesting the county commissioners to transfer that parcel to the town for purposes of a flower garden, which the town wants to establish on that site. And so under Indiana law, we can make a transfer to another local government entity of property for any consideration whatsoever or on any terms whatsoever, as long as both entities, governmental entities, adopt substantially similar ordinances.
Commissioners approved the transfer 2-0. The county commissioners also discussed renewing a contact tracing partnership with Indiana University. Monroe County Health Administrator Penny Cottle said the agreement would extend the partnership, which ended in June of 2021, until June of 2022. She added that she was thankful for Indiana University's cooperation throughout the pandemic, which she said is not a common occurrence.
IU has expressed that when they talk to other universities and communities, whether it's the Office of Student Housing or some other entity, that it is not commonplace. And I found that when I was talking with other health departments, even just in the Big Ten, when I was talking with other health departments, they don't all have that close communication and good communication as we do. So we are extremely lucky and blessed to have that.
The commissioners approved the agreement 2-0. The Bloomington Board of Zoning Appeals continued discussion around the future Starbucks location at South Liberty Drive. Before the July 22nd meeting, Development Services Manager Jackie Scanlon had requested information on the number of parking spots filled during peak hours from a comparable Starbucks location. However, the petitioner had provided a total number of parking spots instead. Scanlon said city staff had requested parking numbers so that they could get an idea of how many parking spots are actually being used.
In service of our larger city goals of, helping to reduce climate change effects and trying to protect our green open spaces and all of those things like that, we reducing codependency, we try to minimize the number of extra spaces that we just have around town at our uses, and that's why the code is written the way it is. So I just wanted to highlight that is why we request the kind of data we do request. We didn't get that here, but we do understand that you may feel that the information they've provided is enough to move forward based on your conversation last time.
Board member Susan Sandberg suggested that the petitioner may not understand what Scanlon was asking for. She said board members needed the additional information in order to make the correct decision.
I would ask the petitioners if they feel that they now have a direction in order to bring back to us the necessary data and information that we need to do what I think you're getting an indication that we're very inclined to want to do for you, but we feel at this point we can't just yet. And so I know that is difficult, but are you getting what more we need in order to not just be strict interpreters of the UDO and say 11, that's all you get? I mean, we want to do right by your business, but we need a little bit more from you or from your organization in order to do that.
Board members voted 3-0 to continue the petition to the August 19th meeting. Historic Preservation Program Manager Gloria Colomb presented a request for a new building in a historic neighborhood at the July 22nd Bloomington Historic Preservation Committee meeting. Colomb discussed the proposed home in the near West Side Conservation District on West Kirkwood Street. She said the staff recommended conditional approval with optional recommendations for the design.
There are some recommendations for a separate porch roof, or to break up the front facade a little more. However, these are just recommendations. It's a take it or leave it. In other words, staff has no hard feelings. It's just indicating the slight oversizedness.
Commissioner Chris Sturbaum questioned the use of non-traditional materials for the front of the building. Petitioner Dawn Gray said she designed the house in a way that would respect the historical neighborhood but not mimic it.
The intent was to use materials that are relevant to the historic area, being the lap siding, and then instead of doing some type of more Victorian fish scale treatment or something different for the gable trim, we were trying to take it in a more modern direction. Being that this isn't a historic structure, this is a new house in a historic area. So we were trying to use the materials in a way that is respectful of the historic area, but didn't mimic it necessarily.
Commissioner Sam DeSoler showed support for the design. He agreed that the petitioner was using materials that reference the historical nature of the neighborhood while allowing the house to look modern.
One of the other things that the guidelines say is a new building should, it can use historically referential materials, but should be clearly of its time. And I believe this building really does that well. I mean, some of the stuff is a little bit funky, like the beam coming off of the front. I think that's wonky, but I think using the fiber cement materials in various configurations does make this building read as something that is not, it's not trying to be historicist, and I think that's actually appropriate.
Commissioners voted to approve the design 5-1, with Commissioner Chris Sturbaum dissenting. And that is all for CATSweek. Thank you for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.